Civil defense officials are urging you to take cover.
Please stay indoors with your windows closed.
In March of 1979, Americans awoke to a nuclear nightmare.
The potential is there for the ultimate risk of a meltdown at the 3 Mile Island atomic power plant outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
In the worst case, a massive amount of radioactive material would be spewed into an area 5 to 10 miles in diameter and 20 miles downwind.
The president tried to quell the panic.
The president's trip here was a dramatic gesture.
Within the next few days, important decisions will be made.
But the accident had fundamentally changed the nuclear power industry.
What we have to do is to call for an end to the nuclear age in its entirety.
Today, decades after 3 Mile Island cast a shadow on America's atomic dream, could nuclear power be the answer to fighting global warming?
Well, if we don't have nuclear, it's going to be a much hotter planet.
One morning, Nuclear Regulatory Commissioner Victor Galinsky received some startling news. Mysteriously high radiation and pressure readings were coming from a new nuclear reactor at 3 Mile Island.
The technical experts tell you there's got to be something wrong with the meters. It's got to be not working properly. Well, it turned out the meters were right.
Was an accident at the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant, which is located on an island in the Susquehanna River, 10 miles from Harrisburg.
The cooling system broke down this morning. Some radioactive steam escaped into the air. Radiation was detected a mile away from the plant.
The plant's controlled nuclear reaction was supposed to create steam that spun a turbine generating electricity. But on this day, a sudden cascade of problems left the reactor's operators scrambling to regain control. Some officials began to fear the worst, molten uranium melting through the bottom of the reactor, what scientists have dubbed the China syndrome, as if the fuel could melt through to the other side of the world. A new blockbuster movie had already primed the public for such a catastrophe.
The China syndrome. Only a handful of people know what it really means, and they're scared.
There was a tremendous scare that the reactor could just blow up.
The simplest solution, having a man open the valve to release the trapped gas, is impossible. Heat and radioactivity would kill anyone making that attempt.
Galinsky still can't believe one of the ideas floated.
It was suggested, to my amazement and horror, that we send in terminal cancer patients. I remember the very distinct feeling that senior people are giving you advice that which, if you took, would send you right off the cliff. The idea of the men in white lab coats were supposed to know, and they're standing there scratching their heads. That, I think, shook the public.
I don't know why we need to tell you each and everything that we do.
It's a lot worse than what they're telling us. Typical lies. They ought to close all those nuclear power plants down.
They've heard so much contradictory technical jargon from officials that the first casualty of this accident may have been trust.
On the third day, high radiation readings of controlled release of gases from the plant caused the governor to call for an evacuation of pregnant women and children.
I am advising those who may be particularly susceptible to the effects of any radiation to leave the area within a 5-mile radius of the 3 Mile Island facility.
3 Mile Island was not the future that was envisioned when nuclear power emerged decades earlier as an alternative to coal-fired electricity.
Tomorrowland, promise of things to come.
Here with my right hand, I give you the magic fire of the atom.
Here, in fact, is the answer to a dream as old as man himself, a giant of limitless power at man's command.
The complex of images around nuclear power is quite unique. There's nothing outside religious imagery that is so strong, so pervasive, and involves so many hooks.
Nuclear energy isn't waiting to help people everywhere in some brave new world of the future. The peaceful atom is here now.
Nuclear scientists had all kinds of visions of the new society. Energy would be practically free. We'd have nuclear-powered flying cars. The deserts would be conquered. We'd build cities in the Arctic waste. There was an explosion of wonderful ideas about how things could be improved.
All of this had been part of a concerted effort following World War II to dull the image of the atom as a tool for war.
Yes, this is atomic energy at work, not as a force for evil, but as a force for good.
Just think of all the things that could be done.
The pitch worked. Increasingly powerful reactors, like those at 3 Mile Island, were scaled up quickly, with regulators telling the public that nuclear power's safety was assured.
The plant is operated by highly trained people who are assisted in their efforts by the most sophisticated technologies available.
They really believed that major accidents were essentially impossible.
12 days after the sirens of 3 Mile Island turned the communities around the plant into ghost towns, all public advisories were finally rescinded, and the 140,000 people who had fled were told to return home.
It was only realized how severe it was 5 years later when they opened up the reactor and discovered half the fuel had melted, which went way beyond anything that anyone imagined before.
No one died at 3 Mile Island, and in the end, it was never proven that the radiation releases created any lasting harm. But the meltdown itself could have been much worse were it not for several timely discoveries, including technicians realizing a crucial pressure valve had been stuck open, an initial contributor to the meltdown.
It would eventually have eaten its way through the bottom of the pressure vessel. And from then on, all bets are off. It's kind of like you're beyond anything that's been studied.
The cleanup after the accident took more than a decade and cost almost $1 billion. And despite a host of reforms to shore up nuclear safety, the lesson to many seemed clear.
Nuclear power is dead as an industry in the United States. It died at 3 Mile Island.
And then, 7 years later, the world watched as the worst fears of 3 Mile Island came to fruition. When the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the Soviet Union had a nuclear accident.
The danger may be escalating. It's an atomic fire and the Soviets can't contain it.
It does now seem likely that sometime in the last couple of days there's been perhaps the worst accident in the short history of the world's nuclear power industry.
The meltdown was massive, killing 31 people and injuring many more. Even with decades of cleanup costing approximately $68 billion, experts say the surrounding area will be uninhabitable for up to 20,000 years.
Chernobyl did for Europe what 3 Mile Island did for the United States, and one result was to not to end, but to slow down the deployment of nuclear energy in Europe.
In the U.S., it took more than 3 decades and promises of new safeguards for support to build again for nuclear power as an energy source. But then, in 2011, the nuclear industry suffered yet another setback.
First an earthquake, then a tsunami, and then a nuclear disaster.
The Japanese government now says 2 reactors are in partial meltdown and 4 more are at risk.
The disaster at Fukushima, which culminated in 3 simultaneous reactor meltdowns and a substantial release of radiation, heightened the unease surrounding nuclear power once more.
Before the meltdown in Japan, American support for nuclear power as an alternative to fossil fuels had reached a new high. But that support appears to be evaporating quickly.
Today, concerns about global warming are taking center stage, causing even some environmentalists to rethink their opposition to nuclear power.
I think it's fair to say that the concerns that young environmentalists have are overwhelmingly around living in a hotter world, and that those pretty seriously outweigh their concerns around nuclear.
This fear-mongering... Environmentalist Michael Schellenberger advocates for nuclear power as a way to combat climate change.
Just even a few years ago, if you point out to people that nuclear is really good for the environment in a whole set of ways, no air pollution, no carbon emissions, people would have just laughed or looked at you like you were crazy or a stooge of the industry or something.
Today, nuclear power supplies 19% of the U.S.'s electricity, while another 20% comes from renewable but weather-dependent energy sources such as solar, wind, and hydropower. Non-renewable fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas provide the rest. The Biden administration has set a goal of 100% carbon-free electricity by 2035.
We are at code red for humanity. Nuclear energy is essential to confronting climate change.
Global warming is an extremely severe problem. Do we need solar energy? Sure we do. And other renewables, wind power and so forth? Absolutely we need them. That's not enough. We also need nuclear power. We need all of the above.
Nuclear energy opponents say too much danger remains, citing safety, cost, and the ability to dispose of radioactive waste. But while memories of past disasters linger, our constantly growing energy needs may overshadow them.
You have to step back. It is the first major new energy source is fire. It is an impressive thing. The question is it good enough? Do we need it now? And do we want this technology?